This is the OTB Television Network, a service of Capital District Off-Track Betting.
Broadcasting live from the Capital OTB studios, this is Racing Across America with Seth Merrow.
Good Sunday morning. Welcome to Racing Across America. I'm Seth Merrow. Thanks for joining us. Appreciate you taking the time for a Sunday morning edition of Racing Across America, where we will do some stakes recaps. We'll do a little handicapping. We'll have a visit a little bit later on as part of the stakes recap from Frank Vespe, theracingbiz.com. They cover racing in the Mid-Atlantic region. Frank often at Maryland for Maryland Racing. I believe last night he was also down for Charlestown Oaks at Charlestown, but he was at Laurel yesterday, so we'll catch up with Frank towards the last portion of the program to recap some of the action at Laurel yesterday. DeFrancis, Salima, the Laurel Futurity. I'm going to go over some of the Parx races here at the top of the show, and as I say, a little handicapping as well on this Sunday edition of Racing Across America. Again, thanks for joining us. I said yesterday, our first weekend back here in the studio, actually, because Saratoga wrapped up, and then we took that next weekend off, and last weekend we were up at Woodbine. So it's our first weekend back here in the studio. Felt like I hopped right back in the saddle again yesterday. Had a fun show. Talked to Tim Wilkin, who was down at Parx. Tim Wilkin from the Times Union doing some of the notes for the Derby and the Cotillion in the week leading up to the big races yesterday. And we got some info from him. Jeremy Plonk, we talked a little bit about the three-year-old scene as it played out through this summer. Jeremy, obviously, horseplayernow.com, but Countdown to the Crown. So the beginning of the year, we talked a lot about the three-year-olds, and I just wanted his take going into really the last major three-year-old restricted race, the Pennsylvania Derby yesterday. And then we also talked to Dave Rodman from Laurel. Got some of his thoughts going into some of that stakes action at Laurel yesterday. So a nice show, kind of kicking things back off here in the late summer fall season in the studio in Albany for Racing Across America, and we will try to continue that again this morning as well. I'll kick things off with the Pennsylvania Derby, which I talked about yesterday and talked with Jeremy, talked with Tim Wilkin. And I put Improbable on top. If you listened yesterday, as we talked more during the morning, I was becoming a little more enamored with War of Will, who I had underneath. And then I had Mr. Money in the third spot. He was going to have to prove it a little bit. But I thought in the field of six, Maximum Security had scratched earlier in the week. I thought in the field of six, those were the three. And why did I think that? Because the three-year-old seen all year. I thought maybe it had sorted itself out a little bit in the summertime, but that turned out not to be the case. When we talked with Tim yesterday, Tim Wilkin, he mentioned having talked to Bob Baffert earlier in the week, and Baffert a little bit concerned about the antics for Improbable in the gate. I'm looking at the chart here. Improbable was in motion prior to the start and broke poorly. So the gate antics continued for Improbable and got that one off to a poor start. But as we watch here, Mr. Money was out and on the lead. The number 6 horse, War of Will, was stalking. And as I say, as the day progressed in the pink, I thought, around the turn, I felt War of Will was in good shape. I thought right here may get going and go by Mr. Money. Mr. Money ran well and wouldn't let the others go by, except on the outside, Math Wizard. 31-1, second longest price in field, gets up for the win. Math Wizard, Mr. Money second, War of Will third, Improbable fourth. It was trainer Safi Joseph. On board was Irod Ortiz, who, as I understand, just kind of picked up the ride because the the regular rider, Edgar Zayas, just wasn't convinced, I guess, to make the trip from Florida, is what it sounded like. And Irod picked up the mount, and that's a pretty good pickup, $1 million victory. The horse had come out of a sixth-place finish in the West Virginia Derby behind Mr. Money. Prior to that, third in the Indiana Derby behind Mr. Money. Pretty close second in the Ohio Derby to Owendale. So there was a little bit that you could have hung your hat on, I suppose. But it was something of a stretch. The betting public reflected that with a 31-1, $64.20 for Math Wizard. And clearly the connections were overjoyed. The notes that came out from that notes team, and down there was Tom Law, Anthony Affronti, and our friend Tim Wilkin. We're getting quotes from folks on the stakes races. The owner of Math Wizard, this is my home track. They asked us to run, but we wanted to. The trainer, Seth Joseph, I've got to retire now. We got the horse going in the right way. John made a gutsy call to come here. It was a crazy call, but then Maximum Security scratched, and Safi Joseph said he was getting all kinds of text messages after that happened. Now you're at a field of 6 where it becomes a little more wide open. Trainer Mark Cassie of War of Will said, I didn't see any excuses. I thought he ran pretty well. He never gave up. And they contacted Bob Baffert by phone about improbable. And again, the gate antics, Bob Baffert quoted as saying, I don't know why he does it. He doesn't seem to do it in California. Mike Smith said he was really good, and then he heard a noise and it set him off. It's just bad luck. It's frustrating. It must be. And probable running fourth after the poor start there. But there is a notable kind of asterisk side note on this that is very, very interesting. And I guess it depends on how you judge productive. But I think we can now go back to, and Bobby Halt made this comment that I picked up on in his recap in the Blood Horse of the Pennsylvania Derby. We can go back to the December 20th maiden claiming race, $16,000 maiden claimer at Gulfstream. And perhaps, as I say, by your definition of productive, label this the most productive claiming race in history. And it would be hard not to have your definition decide that, because coming out of a $16,000 claimer at the end of December at Gulfstream, the winner that day, Maximum Security, goes on to win the Florida Derby, goes on to finish first but gets DQ'd in the Kentucky Derby, and then wins the $1 million Haskell. So comes out of a 16 claimer and wins a $1 million Grade 1 race. Running third that day, Math Wizard, who now has won a Grade 1 $1 million race. It's hard to imagine there are any other claiming races, certainly at the $16,000 level, that produced a couple of Grade 1 $1 million race winners, such as that December 20th race. Math Wizard was claimed out of that race and subsequently claimed a couple more times, I believe. Maximum Security, luckily for that one's connections, nobody dipped in and took him, and so they were able to move on to the Derby and the Haskell and whatnot. But again, just as I say, an interesting little side note there for yesterday's Pennsylvania Derby, going back to that December 20th maiden claimer at Gulfstream. $16,000. You could add Math Wizard, you could add Maximum Security, a couple of Grade 1 $1 million winners. But again, as I said at the top, why would I think the 3-year-old scene would have clarified itself? It has played out this way the entire year. Jeremy Plonk mentioned it yesterday, where it was just, I'm winning this week, I'm winning this, and throughout the early part of the season, that's the way it played out. Now, the eclipse chances of Maximum Security, I think, were benefited by that. There was a potential War of Will could have stepped in that picture with a win, put the Grade 1 Pennsylvania Derby with the Grade 1 Preakness, but War of Will winds up running third, so you would think he's out of the picture essentially. I think at this point, that 3-year-old Eclipse is coming down to Maximum Security and Code of Honor, unless something fluky happens. Somebody earlier this year, maybe even on one of our shows, mentioned Mind Control. That would be a stretch, I think. I think it's maximum security, code of honor. And so this coming Saturday, it's going to be very interesting to see what code of honor does in the Jockey Club Gold Cup. Because if he can beat Older in a grade 1, put another grade 1 on his resume, he'll come into the conversation, certainly. But maximum security, as they say, benefited Eclipse-wise from the results yesterday. Math Wizard is not stepping into that picture, as they say, unless fluky things. I suppose Math Wizard, and they had, I saw a quote, I don't know whether it was on this or on one or the other, I don't see it here, one of the other recaps I read of the race, but they kind of said, hey, we're crazy enough to take a shot at the Breeders' Cup Classic. I suppose if he went and won the Breeders' Cup Classic, maybe he'd go into the conversation at that point. But as they say, for me at this point, it seems like it's coming down, that 3-year-old Eclipse, to maximum security code of honor, and we'll see what code of honor does next week. Our game plan is to actually make a trip down there for some live cut-ins, Jockey Club Gold Cup Day down at Belmont. So looking forward to that and seeing what code of honor does. All right, let's go back to the cotillion, and we talked about this race yesterday, field of 11, and a fun competitive field, Jaywalk, Bellafina, Guarana, Street Band, Serengeti Empress, and it is going to wind up, Guarana, the number 8 horse, takes the lead in the stretch, and looks like a winner to continue the win streak for trainer Chad Brown and Three Chimneys, but gets run down by number 3, Street Band, and that one goes out for Larry Jones. Sophie Doyle on board. Give this one a nice ride, and the chart margin here will be 2 1/4 by the time they come under the wire. Guarana second, and running third was Horologist Bellafina fourth. Serengeti Empress winds up 6th in here. That was a little bit disappointing. Jaywalk, last year's champ, 7th. In here, but it's 7-1. It is Street Band. Got to wait a little bit of a price. The Larry Jones horse, who, as we talked yesterday, this is one that got mentioned a couple of times at least. 3rd in the Alabama after a win in the Indiana Oaks. Disappointed running 7th in the Kentucky Oaks, but did have some trouble there and moved up to 6th through a DQ. Won the Fairground Oaks. So again, there was enough here that you could have taken your shot with this horse with a couple of wins in the last 4 starts, Fairground Oaks, Indiana Oaks, and then the 3rd in the Alabama. But Street Band got it done yesterday in a $1 million race for the 3-year-old fillies, the cotillion. Street Band, again, with Sophie Doyle on board. And they talked about it yesterday. I didn't watch the NBC broadcast, but I saw them replay this race on the Fox MSG NYRA show. And they were talking about, giving kudos to Larry Jones for keeping Sophie Doyle on board. Because when you have a horse like this and, $1 million race, the temptation is maybe to go for one of the kind of the A-list, so to speak, jocks. But he did, and he stuck with Sophie, who's been on board this horse throughout much of the career. And he seems to indicate they kind of fit each other. And sometimes that's just the case. Certainly, that was the case yesterday with Street Band upsetting Guarana. Again, 7-1, $17.40. Guarana went off as just a little bit more than an even money favorite in there and ran second for the first defeat in the career. Kind of think she's still in a good spot for an Eclipse, depending on what she does, although post-race quotes, and let me see if I have those, it seems like maybe Chad Brown is going to go a little bit perhaps in the other direction as far as one-turn races. Chad Brown quoted after the race, she got a pretty good trip. I thought she was sitting real nice, and she was close to a real honest pace. I can't complain with the trip. We had everyone where we wanted them. She was just second best today. She just won a grade 1 going 2 turns, so I can't blame that, the distance. Is she best around one turn? He continues, probably. I can't make any excuse. We gave her a little breather since the coaching club, and maybe she was a little short as well. New track too, but hats off to the winner. She ran really well. Both fillies did. So again, Chad says, is she better around one turn? Maybe. So what will they do next with Guarana? We will see. But he also obviously has Dunbar Road, the winner of the Alabama, in the stable. So they have plenty of opportunities there on the 3-year-old filly side. All right, let's move a little earlier on the card, the Gallant Bob, this one for 3-year-olds sprinting. I like Landeskog over King Jack. King Jack was coming out of a second place finish in the shared belief behind Improbable and went off as the 7-5 favorite. Landeskog ran very well, coming around the turn in the lead. I thought I was in good shape with the 2-1 second choice. Landeskog, the number 6. But King Jack makes a run down the stretch and just proves a little bit classier and clearly the best with a 1.5 length chart margin here under the wire. Landeskog running second and Trophy Chaser third. These are both lightly raced and clearly players on this 3-year-old sprint scene. In a 3-year-old sprint scene that's kind of fun. I mentioned Mind Control earlier, and it's one of those subdivisions that I kind of find intriguing. These were not two of the more prominent names necessarily, but being lightly raced in what they've done so far and doing that, they've now kind of stepped into that subdivision as players. But King Jack coming out of the second to Improbable last time, Joe Rosario on board, gets it done in the Gallant Bob. A nice little supporting stakes race on the undercard. Prior to that, race number 8 was the Parx Dirt Mile, and in the Parx Dirt Mile, I said I put Cold Front on top with some reservations because since coming back from Dubai, the 7th in the Met Mile, and then the 3rd as the 4-5 favorite. The 3rd in the Monmouth Cup was really disappointing. So I just wasn't sure this horse had come back from Dubai, but it had the look of maybe a confidence builder yesterday. Ungraded field and certainly easier than the Met Mile, 2 back with Matoli and McKinsey and Thunder Snow in there. So I put Cold Front on top. I like Diamond King. I have liked him throughout the career. I had him in the 2nd spot. Diamond King is going to take the lead here, the number 8 horse, but Cold Front is going to fight back. You got to love this. Horses on the inside when they just prove to be classier. Once a horse gets past like that, they don't often come back. Not only does he come back, but he comes back and holds Diamond King off by about a length. The chart margin is actually 3/4 of a length, but pretty nice performance by Cold Front. Again, you'd have to think a little bit of a confidence builder, but Diamond King, a good second, forewarned, 3rd in there in the Parx Dirt Mile. We'll see what's next for Cold Front. Again, they've tried top competition. You would have to think, Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile is potentially in the wheelhouse for that one. Again, off a little bit of a confidence builder. And again, didn't run away from Diamond King. I think Diamond King is a salty little horse, though, so that was a decent performance. Also, one more from Parx. Wanted to look at the Turf Amazon for the ladies going 5 furlongs on the grass. I had Miss Gossip on top after a scratch of Goldwood. Miss Gossip winds up 4th in here as the 2-1 favorite. The winner will be number 5, Rocky Policy. I had that one right underneath. I had Miss Gossip over Rocky Policy. It was notable that Mike Smith was scheduled to ride on the form. It wound up to be Paco Lopez, however, on board Rocky Policy. I don't know whether I would have changed up had I known that when I was handicapping the night before, but Paco Lopez does very well. 4-1 as the second choice, the 3rd choice actually in here. Gets up Stetson Gold 2nd, Booze 3rd, and Miss Gossip 4th. Rocky Policy off a 5th place finish last time at Monmouth, but this horse had run well in Southern California and was essentially a Southern California-based horse, so came to Monmouth and didn't perform well, which may have made you think, how about the travel? What do we make of that? But I thought the horse would run better in another start on the East Coast as opposed to what we saw last time at Monmouth. It just seems like the horse was better than that. So again, I had the horse just underneath, but gets it done. $10.40 for Rocky Policy in the Turf Amazon. All right, let's shift our attention to Belmont now. And I probably should have done these in a different order just because of the notable kind of record-tying performance in the prior race that gave this one a little bit of juice as well. And I'll mention it, John Velasquez in the race we're about to see next tied a record of graded stakes wins in the career, tied Jerry Bailey. I think 660 graded stakes wins in the turf race prior. So he came into this Kelso having a shot to break the record. John Velasquez is on Prince Lucky. He'll wind up second. Pat on the back. Nice win, chart margin of a half a length. Pat on the back, the number 3 horse. Dylan Davis gets it done for trainer Jeremiah Engelhardt with Pat on the back. And this is a nice New York bred. Does this put him? I think this crosses the $1 million mark. There's $300,000 up for grabs. So that would put this a couple. Yeah, you got to be over $1 million because he came into this with 936,000. So new millionaire, Pat on the back. And as they say, he's been a very productive New York bred, now 9 wins in 26 starts, $1 million in the bank. Prince Lucky, it was interesting on the Fox MSG show. Maggie Wolfendale was talking to the connections, the owners, the McConnell brothers, Pennsylvania bred, kind of homebred for them, and a horse who's turned out to be very productive for them as well, coming out of a nice stakes win last time in the state dinner back in July. So they took most of the summer off, came back here, and Prince Lucky, a good second. True Timber for Kieran, and Calumet runs third in the first start back since trying Dubai in the Godolphin Mile behind Coal Front that day. He runs third. But Mr. Velasquez running second behind Pat on the back. Again, congratulations to Dylan Davis and Jeremiah Engelhardt for a good win. But running second does not move ahead of Jerry Bailey in the number of graded stakes wins in the career. But you got to think that's right around the corner. And now let's go back and watch the record-tying race. And Larry Colmus noted it as they came under the wire in the Noble Damsel a little earlier at Belmont. Significant form for Stephanie Seymour Brandt. The number 5 horse gets it done. Chad Brown trains. Chad Brown also trains second-place finisher Stella de Camelot. Valedictorian runs third. I like Bella Vase. Bella Vase, kind of a disappointing fourth in here. But the number 5 horse, as the 6-5 favorite, significant form, gets it done for Chad and John Velasquez. And again, this win tied Mr. Velasquez. And again, I think it was 660, 661. I think it was 660. The number of graded stakes wins in his career, which is a record. The number of graded stakes wins, tying him with Jerry Bailey. And again, it's, sooner rather than later, you would have to think that this will be a record owned by solely Mr. Velasquez. So in the Noble Damsel, significant form, who, a nice career for her. She had started the career with that disqualification up at Saratoga in 2017. I remember that towards the end of the meet. A little bit controversial because she won very easily. She came back in the Miss Grillo as a maiden with the DQ now and won that. So clearly they had confidence coming out of that race. Then they went out to the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Filly Turf and ran 4th in there. But she's had a pretty nice career. 5 wins now in 12 starts, and what must be well over $700,000, $750,000 in the bank for that one. All right. Wanted to look at one more before we go to a break, and we talked a little bit about this one yesterday that you were going to want to take a look at it. They showed it actually on the Fox MSG NYRA show. The Dogwood from Churchill Downs. It was only a listed stake. It was restricted to 3-year-old fillies, but Brad Cox essentially noted after the race in the post-race commentary, this was just kind of a prep for the Breeders' Cup. It's going to be Covfefe. Covfefe coming out of the gutsy win over Serengeti Empress in the test. She's going to be the number 6 horse here. She will be easy to pick out because she's kind of right with the pack as they turn into the stretch. But then she opens it up. The chart margin winds up to be 8 for Covfefe. She goes off as the 1-5 favorite, pays $2.40, and the easiest 20% on your money you could make getting it done there with Covfefe at 7 furlongs, and that's what Brad Cox said. Essentially, prep for the Breeders' Cup, unlisted stake, restricted to 3-year-olds, so she had these over a barrel a little bit, as noted by the odds and the performance, but it should set her up. They were kind of talking before the broadcast, the commentators, gee, would she go in the Breeders' Cup Filly and Mare? Would they try the boys? And that question was asked of Brad Cox after the race, and he said, nah, it'll be the Breeders' Cup Filly and Mare turf. The 7 furlongs, she's now proven at it, and 7 furlongs was also the test, so she's now gone 2 for 2 with the 7 furlong distance. So next stop, Breeders' Cup Filly and Mare sprint for Covfefe. So she's looked great really all season long. She had that one little blip when she finished behind Mia Mischief and Awestruck in the Roxelana. Now, it is notable that was the lone try against Older, and of course the Breeders' Cup sprint, Filly and Mare sprint, she will go against Older there too, but you just have to think she is certainly in good form, pretty special. It'll be fun. It'll be fun to see her face off against Older again and see if she can get it done off of an effort like that, the last couple of efforts when you include the test. All right, we will take a break, come back, do a few minutes of handicapping, and then we'll be joined by Frank Vespe. So stay tuned. Racing Across America continues on this Sunday morning. Be back in a couple. Here's some exciting news if you like Twilight Racing. Weekdays during the 2019 Belmont Fall Meet, NYRA has moved back their racing schedule by 2 hours, making the new post time at Belmont 3 p.m. So remember, weekdays at Belmont, the new post time is 3 p.m.
Where's the best place to find your favorite teams, your favorite food, daily drink specials, and wagering on live horse racing? Legends Field Sports Bar, 711 Central Avenue, Albany. Get your game on day or night with 75 flat-screen TVs, tournament-style pool tables, a private banquet room, and live horse racing. So if someone asks you, where's the best sports bar in the capital region? Tell them Legends Field Sports Bar, inside the Clubhouse Racebook, 711 Central Avenue, Albany.
Now it's a global series. The best racers from all over the world, the best trainers, the best jockeys.
You can get a free entry into the Breeders' Cup, and everybody wants to run in a Breeders' Cup race.
You get your travel expenses paid for the Breeders' Cup. Automatic berth takes a lot of pressure off.
If we're considering 2 different races and one was a win and you're in and one was a not, that would be the tiebreaker.
It's probably the best thing that's happened to racing in the last 10 years.
Breeders' Cup Challenge, win, and you're in.
On this Sunday morning, I will make a note. You saw in the commercial block there, and those are kind of pre-produced. We got to pull that one out. Noted the 3 p.m. post time for the late summer fall at Belmont, but that has been changed. Starting Wednesday, they go back to the 1 p.m. So make note of that. Today, actually, but the weekends were always 1 o'clock. The game plan was going to be, due to construction of that new hockey arena down there, the summer fall meet at Belmont was going to have weekdays starting at 3, where construction would end, then racing could begin. But over the last couple of weeks, they've kind of reassessed the situation, talked to the horsemen, and they decided a few days ago that they would just go back to that 1 p.m. post time. And also there was going to be a shortened Belmont meet going early to Aqueduct. That's not going to happen either. They'll continue at Belmont to the normal October 27th, I think it is. So the length of the Belmont meet has gone back to its normal form, and the post time also starting Wednesday back to a normal 1 o'clock. So mark that on your calendar. And as I say, today's 1 o'clock too, but the weekends have always been 1 o'clock since they returned to Belmont. Speaking of Belmont, I'll do a little handicapping here for the next couple of minutes. There's a couple of stakes on the card today, so I thought I'd take a look at both of those. More is certainly in the Gallant Bloom, just to alert you, like Covfefe down at Churchill. Just want to alert you to a performance you're going to want to tune in for. Just a little after 2 o'clock today, the third race at Belmont's the Gallant Bloom. These are fillies and mares, 3-year-olds and up, and that includes Come Dancing. Come Dancing, the really talented runner for Carlos Martin, who just has kind of come into her own this year. She's had a talented career, 7 wins and 12 starts, but this year 3 for 4, including the Ballerina last time up at Saratoga, which she won in just fine fashion as a short-priced favorite. Again, she's going to be the one you're going to want to pay attention to. I have her on top, so it's master of the obvious with the 1-5 morning line favorite. But again, it's just to alert you to take a look at that a little after 2 o'clock down at Belmont in the third race. Minute to Stardom, if you were looking for an alternative, certainly coming out of a 3-race win streak, including a Grade 2 stake up at Saratoga. Carrera Cat, nice winner in a state-bred stake last time at Saratoga for trainer John Morrison. That one seemed to indicate some good form right now. Those look like they would be the 2 alternatives if you were going to take a shot to maybe upset things and juice up an early pick 5 or whatnot, but it looks completely like it's going to go through come dancing in the Gallant Bloom. A little bit later on the card, race number 9 at Belmont this afternoon. This one a little bit more of a competitive race, although my top pick is the horse that is going to attract the action and be the likely short-priced favorite just because it's Chad Brown and Peter Brandt. In the Hettinger, it's a state-bred stakes race for the fillies and mares going 1 1/8 on the grass. I went 9, 3, 12, and 2. 55. This is a horse that has faced open company and done it well, so moving back into the state breds. But last time came out of a close-up 4th place finish in the Boston Spa at Saratoga, and I mean close up. The winner that day was Significant Form, and this horse was a half length back. We saw what Significant Form did yesterday. The 3rd place finisher who got the third by a smidge over 55. 3rd place finisher was Starship Jubilee, who won a stakes last week up at Woodbine. So again, 55 moving back in against the state breds off that nice performance that has been flattered the past couple of weekends. The performance in the Boston Spa, 55 on top. Second slot, Giant Zinger. It is Bill Mott. I think we have to get back to some of the better numbers underneath. The last couple of starts, the numbers may be a little light, but I don't think it would be a shock to see this one get back to those numbers because it may just be maybe a negative horse for a course up at Saratoga because the 2 most recent Belmont numbers, 3 and 4 starts back, probably fit nicely with this crew. And then Classic Lady in the 3rd spot. Last couple of starts for this one were okay up at Saratoga, and then 3 starts back, a nice win right here at Belmont. Probably puts that horse in the thick of things as well. So in the 9th race at Belmont today, the Hettinger, that'll go off at about 5:14. I have it 9, 3, 12, and 2. You can find all the Belmont selections on the Capital OTB website. If you go to capitalotb.com, click on the Handicapper Support link every day. Selections from various tracks in a nice printable PDF format that you can set by your computer or take with you if you go here to the racebook for NFL Sunday, perhaps. Although they're printed right out by the door, so save your ink if you're coming down here because you can pick one right out of the bin in the front hall. All right, going to take a break. When we come back, as promised, Frank Vespe, he was at Laurel yesterday. We'll get a little recap of that action from Frank right after this. Stay tuned. Racing Across America does continue.
Birdstone is an outside front. They're coming down to the finish. Can Smarty Jones hold on? Here comes Birdstone. Birdstone surges past. Birdstone wins the Belmont Stakes. In front, but here comes High Chaparral. High Chaparral, the defending champ, to take it to Bob. These 2 arch rivals head to head with Joe Hart bearing down on them. It's going to be a 3-horse photo finish in the turn. Here's the wire. Photo finish.
Here's some exciting news from Capital OTB. Capital Off-Track Betting and the Rivers Casino have partnered to bring you the finest experience in wagering on all your favorite thoroughbred and harness tracks from right inside the casino. Our newest location is open daily and can be found at Van Flick's Bar, offering live tellers, self-serve betting terminals, racing information kiosks, and all the amenities you've come to expect from Capital OTB. See you at the Rivers Casino in Schenectady.
Racing Across America, as promised before the break, made connection with our friend Frank Vespe, the racingbiz.com. If you want to follow racing in the Mid-Atlantic region, no better place to do it. And one of the reasons, they're live at all the big events, including Laurel yesterday for a great stakes day. Frank, good morning.
Good morning, Seth. Good to be with you today.
Haven't talked to you throughout the summer, and we had Dave Rodman on yesterday. We were talking a little bit about the summer down in Maryland, and he was calling the races, obviously, with action over at Timonium. And I'll just get your take on the Mid-Atlantic summer and a little action over at Timonium. And I'm curious, did you make it over to Colonial at all?
I did. I got down to Colonial twice, actually. I was there for opening day and then for the last day of live racing. And, it's fun to see Colonial back on the landscape, and they did a great job this year. And I think the big question going into Colonial this year was going to be, where are the horses going to come from? Are they going to have horses? Because in all the prior years, Maryland had stopped racing in Colonial, so Maryland sort of decamped to Virginia for that month, and that didn't happen this year, but they did a great job getting horses in from kind of all over the place. And obviously the big purses they had will certainly help in that regard, but I thought they did a nice job. It was good to see Colonial back in the landscape and doing well this year, and so I think everybody's happy with that, and they're talking about the possibility of adding some more days for next year, so that's certainly a fun thing to see. And I also got to spend the 2 weekends at Timonium, so that's always it's always fun. Get a couple of corn dogs, ride the Ferris wheel and a little horse racing.
I said to Dave yesterday, isn't there like a Ferris wheel on the far turn? He said, yeah, it's right over by the funnel cake stand.
Exactly. And Dave loves to call that they're going past the Ferris wheel or the funnel cake stand. And it's actually, last year I was talking to a trainer who was sending out a first-time starter in a race. And I said, your horse going to win? And he said, if he doesn't spook when he sees the Ferris wheel, he's going to win. So, things you have to worry about when you race at the fair meet.
Yeah, it's this time of year, actually, up in Maine. I was at a fair a few years ago for harness racing, and it was the same thing. Between the harness race, you go out and you get the funnel cake, you come back, you bet a little bit. Although I will say, a Maine fair is a little bit better because there was also the lobster roll stand.
Yeah, a little light on lobster roll. We do crabs in Maryland.
Oh, okay.
We don't do lobsters, but no, I always enjoy Timonium, because it feels very old time. I mean, it's an old grandstand, it's an open air grandstand, but the difference between Timonium and most tracks on most days is, 90% of the people who are at Timonium are there to bet on Timonium. So everybody comes out to watch the race, and so when the horses come into the stretch, people are cheering, and it feels like an event. It doesn't feel like just another day at the races where, a third of the people are watching New York and 20% are watching Florida and here and there. Everybody's there for this race, and so it really makes it fun.
You mentioned that fair I was at a few falls ago up in Maine. It was the same thing. It was harness racing, obviously, but I don't even know if you could bet other tracks. So everybody was geared right into the action there, and there was cheering in the straight. Yeah, it was kind of a throwback, and maybe that's the fun of the fairs. Let's talk a little bit Laurel yesterday before we get to specifics. Just fill us in on the day. Certainly, I'm imagining from what it was up here, and I don't think it was any different down there. The weather had to be very nice.
Oh, the weather was perfect. It was really a gorgeous day, and if anything, it was maybe a little bit hot, a little bit surprising in mid-September, but it was a really nice day, and it's fun. I mean, the DeFrancis has been a fixture for years, and it's great. And I mean, I thought the Turf Cup field came back really nice, which was fun to see. And to me, the other, we'll talk about this more, but seeing the Salima and the Laurel Futurity stretched back out to 2 turns and get a purse boost, that just it's so good to see that, because those races were such important races for such a long time, and it would be tremendous to see them get back, sort of attain some prominence on the national racing landscape again.
Which I think in this current format is possible. I say it every year. I really like the subdivision of 3-year-olds on the turf, and this kind of plays into that with the 2-year-olds who in a couple of months when the calendar page changes, they'll jump into that. But I think there's a lot of opportunities during the year for those 3-year-olds on the turf, and we can kind of define them now. And so I think the way the Salima and the Laurel Futurity are now, they can kind of play into that. And we'll hit on those in a few, but let's start with the DeFrancis Grade 3 event, $250,000 up for grabs, 6 furlongs the trip. I took a little shot with Asmussen's New York Central off the race a couple of back, the win at Pimlico with the triple-digit buyer in the Maryland Sprint. Could only manage to run 4th in here, but the winner, Kelly Beggs Captain, another horse I had in the mix, came in off a couple of starts at Saratoga. And I will say the Saratoga runners the past couple of weeks since the meet ended have been doing very well at various venues. Kelly Beggs Captain, Eric Consell on board gets it done. Altissimo, who came in from a second place finish at Thistledown most recently, but certainly the triple digits there kind of stood out. And they're 1-2 as we watch him come under the wire. And running 3rd is number 6, He Hate Me, for Stanley Huff and Sagamore. What were your thoughts out of the DeFrancis?
Well, I agreed with you. I thought this was New York Central's race because I really thought what was going to happen is you would have, you'd have He Hate Me, Altissimo, Old Time Revival. I thought they would all be dueling, and it was going to set up perfectly for New York Central. And in fact, what happened is Old Time Revival just ran away for the first half mile. He went 44 and change. He's 3-4 lanes clear, and then stopped. And Kelly Beggs Captain had a nice trip under Consell. He settled inside. There's kind of a strung out field. He got through inside and then held off Altissimo. I thought Altissimo ran really well. But talking with Eric Consell afterwards, and I asked him, how confident were you coming into this race off that effort? He was 3rd in the 4-go at 30-1, but behind Matoli, who obviously is a rocket ship. And he said, I was really confident coming in. And John Terranova, the trainer, apparently told him just, ride with confidence and bring back the money. So he did both of those things. It was a good effort. I mean, this field was, we've seen better fields in the DeFrancis than this one, which was a little bit disappointing, but certainly taking nothing away from Kelly Beggs Captain, who got the 6 furlongs in 108.10. That's 0.15 seconds off the track record set by Richter scale in 2000.
Yeah, it was a very nice performance, again, coming out of the 4-go up there behind, as you say, the very talented Matoli. And I said it a couple of moments ago, the Saratoga horses have been doing very well, but I want to tie in because we did mention Colonial. Have you picked up on opening day on the return to Laurel a couple of Fridays ago? I was in doing the handicapping show, and I kind of picked up on it then. There were a couple of winners who had come out of Colonial, and it seems like that has played out over the last couple of weeks. I think the Colonial horses are worth watching in their next start.
Yeah, it was an interesting meet in that regard, I think, because what you saw is, I don't know that the fields were, a lot of the fields were not very deep. They didn't go 5 horses deep. There might have been a bunch of horses, but, the 3, 4, 5 horses weren't very good. But the first 2 horses were, So I think you certainly want to keep an eye on horses that ran well down there, because they were seeing some pretty good horses at the top of those races, and if they ran well, they probably are okay.
Yeah, as I said, I've been watching them the past couple of weeks, and I will continue to do so. It just seems like they've been running well in their subsequent starts at other venues. All right, let's go a little earlier on the card and kind of go in chronological order. We've talked about it already. The 2-year-old fillies and the 2-year-old males, a couple of nice stakes on the grass. The Salima was the first stake to take a look at. A 1.16 on the grass, couple of $100,000 up for grabs. I took a little shot with Love Beach coming out of Colonial. That was one of the factors I was using. An okay third and only the second career start after having broken the maiden in the debut. So Love Beach was okay. Sunset Promise was coming out of Kentucky Downs. You always have to watch those horses as well. But coming out of Saratoga, it was Sharing for Graham Motion, who had a spectacular day, trainer Graham Motion. But Sharing a close-up third in the career debut on turf, and then in an off-the-turfer, broke the maiden pretty impressively last time. It gets back on the turf, goes 2 turns, and pulls away as the 1-2 favorite. Chart margin at 2.5 lengths. Sharing is going to be one to watch.
That's absolutely right. And in fact, Graham Motion said afterwards that they are thinking Breeders' Cup for this filly. And, the running time here was 1:42.3. The boys 2 races later went the same distance in 1:44 and a piece. So she was moving out pretty well there. I was really surprised that they bet her down to 1-2, which seemed really aggressive for a filly whose top buyer at this coming into the race was 67.
Yeah, and the buyers are really the entire field were pretty evenly matched. So I was with you. I didn't quite see this horse as that kind of a favorite, but I will say, betting public nailed it.
Yeah, no, they absolutely did. I was on Sunset Promise in this race, who went off at I thought underlaid, rather overlaid 8-1, and she, dueled for the lead, was in ahead, but had no answer. Sharing, absolutely perfect trip under Manny Franco. I mean, he just, gets the horse into a perfect spot in third by herself, perched off the dueling leaders, go whenever you want, and that's exactly what she did. And she was clearly best in here. She's clearly one to keep an eye on. She was a $350,000 auction purchase as a yearling last year. She's a daughter of Speightstown out of Shared Account, who's a Breeders' Cup winner, earned almost $2 million. So there's a lot of reasons to keep an eye on this filly, and she may be one. And this would be a lot of fun to see her if she does go Salima Breeders' Cup. That would be a pretty nice. Payoff for Laurel Park in their first year stretching this race back out to 2 turns and adding $100,000 to the purse.
Yeah, that's a great point. It would certainly flatter the stakes program there with the winner moving on to a nice performance in the Breeders' Cup. We'll see how that works out. Potentially same scenario in the Laurel Futurity. We'll see if any of them make that decision. But in this race, I like Doc Boy. Again, a horse coming out of a performance over at Colonial. Doc Boy, the number 7, will run third. Torres del Paine runs second in here at a 15-1 price. That one I would have had a little tougher time pulling in, although that one was coming out of a race at Colonial. But coming from Saratoga, Irish Mias, a horse I like quite a bit, and in fact was my Channel 10 long shot of the day in the second place finish in the career debut at 9-1, followed up with another second. So this was a maiden for Graham Motion again. Nice day for Graham Motion, gets it done for some of his prominent ownership connections. But Irish Mias, in the third career start, breaks the maiden in the Laurel Futurity.
Yeah, it's a nice way to break your maiden in a $200,000 race. It's pretty nice work if you can get it. And you mentioned Graham Motion, and it kind of was his world, and we were just living in it yesterday. In this race, his Irish Mias, and he also has Torres del Paine, and they run 1-2 in this spot. Both those horses have objections lodged against them because they both drift about 4 paths out, very close to the wire. Objections denied. So it's a Graham Motion exacta. And then the next stake, he's going to get put up by DQ. So pretty good day where the racing gods are smiling on you like this. But Irish Me is a fun horse there. He is out of the whole Irish War Cry family, owned and bred by Isabel Di Tommaso, who was a Haskell of Haskell Invitational fame, and a bunch of her family members were there. I talked to Isabel Ellis and Ellie Glackham, who are both relatives of hers, and they were just, really excited. Really, it's really fun for them because of this whole family of horses that are homebreds over generations, and they've had so much fun with them over the last few years. Irish War Cry, Regally Irish, Irish Straight. These are all stake winners, and now this one. And so this looks like a horse they'll have some fun with. I don't know. I don't think this is a horse that's quite the quality of Sharing, who we saw in the last race, but you can still have a lot of fun with a horse that can win a $200,000 race.
Yeah, and again, one that'll be fun watching when the calendar page turns as they become 3-year-olds on the turf. As they say, love that subdivision. Bald Eagle Derby, also on the card, 3-year-olds going 1.5 miles on the grass. This is that subdivision I like, and these kind of races are a lot of fun with the 1.5 mile distance. And in here, I liked He's No Lemon, so I wind up getting put up. Take a look coming down the stretch though at the 4-horse, who I had right underneath, Jesus Solitude, and it does kind of tighten up in here. I was watching these races during the handicapping show yesterday and commenting. I thought they made the right decision here. There was clearly, things tightening up, and we're kind of watching the stretch around here. You see the 4, and the 4 kind of comes in, and when you watch the head on, the horse starts to come in, the jock kind of corrects, and then on the second time, the correction did not hold, and it came in and kind of tightened things up on the rail. So it was Jesus Solitude first under the line, but winds up being disqualified out of the money. I'm just looking here, DQ'd actually to 6th place. That moves up He's No Lemon, another mystery. The 10 runs second or placed second, and number 9, Change Eye. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly, but winds up being placed 3rd. But He's No Lemon, and again, notable, it's Graham Motion on what was, a huge, and he was down there, and clearly he saw it was a huge day for Graham Motion.
Yeah, it was a huge day for Graham Motion. I actually even forgot to mention in the Irish Meas race, there was a neat moment. I tweeted out a picture of it where they were waiting to determine whether the Irish Meas was going to be DQ'd or not, and Manny Franco, the jockey, was standing there, and his daughter, I guess, is 3-ish, and so she was standing next to him holding his hand, and they were all so Manny and Graham and the daughter and one of the owners were kind of standing and staring at the screen waiting to see what would happen. So kind of a neat moment there, which as I said, I tweeted out at the Racing Biz. But this was, I was on Jesus Solitude here, and this is a hard luck horse, and I feel bad for them. And I agree, the horse had to come down. He almost put Zonda over the rail. And, you got to take him down in that spot. But he was clearly best in here. He was clearly best in his last race, which was the Virginia Derby, where he was sort of, dawdling along in 5th and 6th, a few lengths off the pace, and they went 118 for 3/4. And he closed, and he almost got up, but didn't quite get up because you can't quite overcome 4 lengths, when the horses go 118 for 3/4. And this time, again, he's clearly best, but he comes over, has to be taken down, and that puts up He's No Lemon. So, Eddie Keneally, who trains Jason Solitude, has a pretty nice horse there if he could just get a break or two.
Yeah, it was certainly, again, deserved, but it's one of those where, as you say, best horse, and you hate to see that happen, but had to come down in that situation. But that made for, as I say, a very good day for Graham Motion. Let's move a little bit later on the card. Race number 7 was the Baltimore-Washington International Turf Cup, Grade 3 event, 1 mile on the grass. I thought Frontier Market from Chad Brown was going to be the one to beat, and winds up running a decent second in here. Horse that I had down in the 4th spot, and I will tip my cap, had Dave Rodman on yesterday, and he liked Caribou Club and gets the call there at a nice $9 mutual. Number 7 Caribou Club will get up over number 6 Frontier Market. Cullum Road runs 3rd in here and up the ante 4th in kind of a blanket finish situation. But again, it was a nice run from Caribou Club. Tommy Proctor trains. And I saw Tommy Proctor in the winner's circle, in fact. Your thoughts in the International Turf Cup?
It was this was a really good group. You had Glorious Empire coming back, Grade 1 winner, one of the best turf horses of last year, first start of the year. Caribou Club, multiple graded winner. Just Howard, multiple graded winner. So I was really happy to see what a good field they put together for this race. I loved Caribou Club in this spot. This was probably my bet of the day. I just thought he was coming in perfect, and he delivered there. He ran, I thought, a really good race. He got the right setup. There's a fast pace in front of him, which is what he wanted. He was able to run into it. He was able to get it without having to swing 10 wide or anything. He was 2 wide, 3 wide, got the lead with a 16th to go and held on. And it was kind of funny because it was a track record, 133.35 for a mile, and asked Fergal Lynch about it, who was the jockey, and he said, well, kind of set up that way. That's how the race was going to be run. I wouldn't put too much stock in a track record today. So he was impressed with the horse, not so much with the track record.
Yeah, interesting. Frank pulled up the Twitter feed to see the picture, and that is a very cute picture of the folks looking for the results of potentially the stewards looking at the race. Manny and his daughter, very cute, and Graham Motion out there as well. But as I'm scrolling down, I knew you were at the Charlestown Oaks because you said yesterday you're going to head there. But there was also a picture of Math Wizard. Was that like on the agenda? Or was that another Racing Biz photo?
It was, I had a couple people there covering the races there. It was not me personally, so we were everywhere, but I was only in 2 places.
Do you have any thoughts on the Pennsylvania Derby? I showed it earlier, and I started the show by saying, because I had improbable over War of Will, over Mr. Money, and we talked with some guests yesterday, and I said, well, they're the 3 in the race. And I said at the top of the show, why did I think the 3-year-old scene had kind of become a little more definitive over this summer? Of course not, given what we saw earlier in the year, and that's the way it played out with Math Wizard winning.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, the 3-year-old boys, it's you put them all in a hat, juggle up the hat, and whichever one pops out wins. And I don't think there's any particular difference among any of those horses. And some years are like that. I mean, I thought the Cotillion was a great race, and the 3-year-old fillies are really interesting. The 3-year-old boys, they're a bunch of horses.
Yeah, it's a very funny year. But again, at the top of the show, I said it's going to be interesting because I think the eclipse now has come down to maximum security or potentially code of honor, which makes the Jockey Club Gold Cup next week kind of interesting.
Yeah, it should be fun. I mean, maximum security. What do you do with this horse? The horse is really talented if he can get to the races at all, but it seems like it's one step forward, one step back for him. But it certainly, with Math Wizard winning that race, you got to point to that 16,000 maiden claimer he and Maximum Security ran in as one of the best races of the year, don't you?
I said that at the start of the show. I saw that in Bobby Halt's column in the Blood Horse, and I said, I don't know what your definition of productive is, but that has to be the most productive claiming race of all time, with Maximum Security and Math Wizard coming out, a couple of Grade 1 $1 million winners out of a $16,000 yet maiden claimer. Frank, before we let you go, again, you were at Charlestown last night, and I'm just looking at the chart right now. Charlestown Oaks, Lady TNT. Any thoughts there?
Yeah, it was a fun day. Charlestown puts on a nice show for their big days, of which this was obviously one. And interesting thing was that, Lady TNT, trained by Joe Sharp. Joe is a Charlestown native and ridden by J.D. Acosta, who has, probably won most of his races at Charlestown over the years. And talking with J.D. after that race, he said, well, all these other guys are really, really good riders, and but they're used to being at tracks where you break and then you settle and see what happens. Here at Charlestown, you kind of want to be on the engine if you can be. And he got to the lead with this filly, and she got brave and she didn't come back. And she should not have been 35-1 in that field. She probably should have been 8. But sometimes it works out that way. But I do think there is sometimes some advantage to the local guys at a track like Charlestown, knowing how to get the horse in the winning position.
Yeah, he was on the front end the whole way. $76.80 on the win side. Frank, as always, appreciate the visit. Now that we're back in the studio, we'll be talking to you more often. Again, the racingbiz.com, a great spot to catch up with all the action in the Mid-Atlantic region. And as I say, we will talk again.
All right, Seth, thanks so much. Always good to talk with you, and good luck today.
Appreciate it. Frank Vespe from theracingbiz.com. Wrapping things up with some stakes recaps down at Laurel earlier. We took a look at the action down at Parx, and again, the little upset in the Pennsylvania Derby, which, again, just kind of helps define a 3-year-old season that really, again, once you get past maximum security and potentially code of honor, is just, it's hard to put your finger on the 3-year-old boys. But once again, the Jockey Club Gold Cup next Saturday could be a very definitive race in the division. We'll see how that plays out next week, as we will. The game plan is to be on the road with some live cut-ins from Belmont next Saturday. All right, I'm going to wrap things up. Do want to alert you that there's a 3% bonus on your Churchill wagers today. There are some restrictions. Check out the website, capitalotb.com, for more information there. Also, NFL Sunday. Every Sunday here at the Clubhouse Racebook during the football season, you can come down and watch all the games and all the racing action. Wear a jersey. You get in for free. Put your name on a square. You can win a jersey or a voucher to the restaurant. Always a lot of fun here on Sundays. Clubhouse Racebook, 711 Central Avenue. Football Sundays throughout the NFL football season. All right. That's going to wrap things up for this edition of Racing Across America, and I am out, so I will see you the end of the week, I believe. I'll be in for Racing Across America. I'm going to get a few days up in Maine. The game plan usually to do that right after the Saratoga meet, but the weather was not good, so I delayed a little bit. We had the trip to Woodbine last week, so a little late summer. Yeah, I will catch summer. Tomorrow's the first day of fall, but I'll be there a little bit later today. So I'll catch late summer, early fall, which is always nice up in Maine. And I think, hopefully, going by what the weather's going to be here today and tomorrow, I'll at least get a little smidge of summer weather in there, maybe sit on the beach a little bit. But I will definitely be eating lobster rolls and fried clams. And as I say, back in towards the end of the week. And looking forward to just a little break. After a go Saratoga meet, and then the trip up to Woodbine, and next week down to Belmont. We also coming up really in the next few weeks. Keep in mind we have a trip to Saratoga Harness. That's always a lot of fun. Come on up to the track and say hello to us. I think it's a Thursday afternoon a couple of weeks from now. And we have a Saturday, the Saturday of the International down at Yonkers. We'll be down there. So some road trips planned in the weeks ahead as well here on OTB TV. All right, this afternoon, Saratoga Harness, Belmont, Woodbine, Churchill in the mix on the network. My selections for Belmont, again, on the website, capitalotb.com. Click on the handicapper support link. As always, really appreciate your tuning in this morning and enjoying Racing Across America. We can't do it without you. Enjoy the racing this afternoon. More importantly, cash a few tickets. Cash a lot of tickets. And we'll see you, as I say, a little bit later in the week.
You're watching OTB TV, a service of Capital Off Track Betting.